Are you afraid of your own shadow? It turns out a lot of people are, except they don't even realize it, because such is the nature of the shadow, and the game that it plays to carefully deflect its personality through the overbearing dominance of the ego. The way that our psyche is formed is we have these two very separate compartments of our expression of self. There's the ego, or the persona that we boldly show to the rest of the world and to ourselves, and then there's the subconscious mind, the personal unconscious, which includes the shadow self, which also includes within it everything that you have repressed from yourself, including your memories, repressed emotions, suppressed feelings, desires, shame, guilt, fear, unintegrated trauma, and all kinds of difficult experiences that you no longer want to be experiencing in your conscious mind. However, that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. And this is where it gets really interesting, in the exposure of who we really are at our core when we think about what our shadow self is dictating about us and about the world around us. Because even though we might not be conscious of its presence, its effects are very real and can end up ruling the vast majority of our experience. The nature of the shadow self is such that it always crawls into the experiences of our lives, but usually in ways that we are not even aware of. It comes out through different subconscious projections, through triggers, through the manifestation of unwanted cycles, patterns, and experiences, through different desires. It can be seen through the different patterns you manifest in relationships, even your health. It comes through in every aspect of your human experience. And even though you might not be conscious of the fact that your shadow is the cause of that manifestation, your shadow is always there. And the reason why you're manifesting what you are is because of the presence of your shadow. Now, this might not seem like a big enough reason for you to do shadow work. But what if I told you that in order to understand why it is that your life is the way that it is, you have to do the shadow integration? You have to be willing to peer behind the veil of your conscious mind to really unearth everything that is beneath the filter of your own mind's perception. To understand why it is that your mind perceives reality in the way that it does, you have to be willing to look into the shadow. And as soon as you illuminate the aspects of your shadow personality, you can really come to see who you truly are at your core. Because sometimes, even in our conscious state of perception, we find ourselves disillusioned by our own shadow self. Sometimes our shadow self tells us that we are one person, when in reality we're feeling something completely different. Oftentimes people project their shadow self through different kinds of interactions that are unwanted when anger, blame, guilt, shame, and all kinds of judgment comes up, which can bring up all those nasty emotions to the surface. And unless we integrate what is subconsciously stored within us and come to accept our shadow self, more of that projection, triggering, drama, and unwanted experiences are going to keep manifesting, because that is the very nature of the shadow self and how it expresses its presence in our experience. Many people are afraid of their shadow simply because they realize that there is a schism in their identity. Subconsciously, they are aware that there is a split between who they are at their core and who they are projecting through their persona in the world around them. You might feel this discontinuity if you ask yourself deep down, what am I feeling? What am I wanting? What am I really experiencing in the truth of my inner world versus what I'm allowing myself to feel, think, experience, and be in my 3D experience of my human self? When it comes down to the nature of the shadow self, there is no mistruth that is possible. In fact, the shadow self is the most truthful aspect of us. Really think about this. Though you can create a facade with your ego, with your external personality, be inauthentic, kind of put on a role play of who you want to be in the world around you, you're unable to do that with your shadow. Because your shadow is hidden from you, it is unchangeable until you decide to peer behind that veil, until you decide to fully expose the parts of you that have not yet been seen, but that truly want to be integrated, because that is the other key to shadow integration. Though we may have parts of us that we don't want to see, that we experience as being negative qualities, difficult emotions that we may be harboring, and parts of us that are just undesirable, sort of our inner demons, those inner demons and parts of us that we feel ashamed of also want to be accepted. They want to be loved. They want to be integrated. So it may seem like it's quite the paradox that our shadow is inaccessible to our conscious mind, however, it wants to be integrated. Because those emotions that we are deeply repressing continue to be expressed by the shadow simply because we are not choosing to look at them. We're not choosing to accept them, and that's what continues to maintain their presence in the shadow self. Many people have a very dense shadow because their earthly experiences are governed by the difficult emotions that they have suppressed in their past. For example, if you went through any kind of damaging childhood experience, the trauma and the imprint from those experiences might be causing you to be permeating the same emotions you felt back then in your childhood in your day-to-day life. You may be driven by the same feeling of being powerless, or victimized, or ashamed, or fearful, or frustrated or angry by what you were dealing with. And because you're unwilling to connect the dots between that experience back then and how you're currently expressing yourself in your subconscious mind through your earthly experiences, you're not seeing that the schism formed because you just chose to disassociate from your shadow completely. Now, why does this happen? We disassociate from our shadow side as a coping mechanism to not have to deal with the weight of all those painful, traumatic experiences that we all inevitably deal with as human beings. The shadow helps us deal with the reality that we don't want to be experiencing. And through our ability to easily suppress anything that feels uncomfortable, we find a kind of relief by choosing to embody a different kind of a persona. And so our personality that we don on a daily basis, we bring into our different life experiences, is kind of a fragmentation of our consciousness. It's not the whole self or the whole truth. What we're experiencing beneath the surface of our psyche can turn into a war between the subconscious mind, or the shadow, and the conscious mind, or the persona, when the two personalities clash, and when we aren't willing to find a way to mediate the battle between them. The way that you relate to your shadow determines a lot about how you relate to the world around you, and here's why. If your shadow is being repressed, if you're choosing not to look at it, then it continues to manifest in different unwanted ways in your day-to-day life. The more that you experience unwanted experiences and start to feel like the world is against you, or the universe doesn't like you, and you want to fight back against the external oppression you're experiencing, the more your shadow becomes denser, because the emotions that you have suppressed are being suppressed even more, causing you to feel even more shame, guilt, fear, denial, resistance, or what have you, that initially caused the shadow's repression, that you are now experiencing even more boldly in your day-to-day life. Essentially, the accumulation of negative experiences can build up your shadow to such a degree that you completely disassociate from the nature of it being the manifester of your life experiences. Now really think about this. If you choose to repress your shadow, then you're choosing to disown your nature as a creator of reality. You're choosing to disassociate from the part of you that does realize you are powerful, limitless, and a creator of your experiences, which means that by choosing to not look into your shadow, you're choosing to separate yourself from the wholeness of your essence. You're choosing to not be the full embodiment of yourself. You're choosing to only be an aspect of you that you want to play the game of your day-to-day life that doesn't, however, realize where the connection of your true feelings and intentions is coming from. To begin doing shadow work, all you have to do is ask yourself the question, why am I feeling the way that I'm feeling in any given experience? This is the first place to begin, because when you can ask yourself this essential question, you can start to access the layer by layer unfolding of your subconscious mind, to analyze the origin of your thoughts, feelings, emotions, and different experiences, tracing back to your early childhood or potentially to even past life memories that have been bringing you into a similar kind of a cycle of repetitious events that lead you to the same expression of the shadow self. Exposing the shadow can feel like a daunting task because once you go into that multi-layered experience of who you are, you start to see all these parts of you that have not been loved, have not been seen, have not been accepted, and probably don't even have a role in the life that you're living. So when it comes down to accepting those parts, you might wonder, what am I supposed to do with them? What am I supposed to do with these traumatic experiences I haven't acknowledged, with these difficult emotions I've been suppressing, with the truth of what I truly am and truly want and truly feel? And that's where you have to ask yourself the next essential question. Now that you're seeing your shadow, you're seeing the both desirable and undesirable aspects of you that have been hidden from your consciousness. What are you going to do with that once they come to the surface? Once you see your shadow, you can't unsee it. So the fun part about shadow work is that once you illuminate this unconscious aspect of you, there's no going back. Many people who start doing shadow work are shocked with how deep it can take them into the understanding of who they are and what their life really is. Sometimes it feels like after you start doing this kind of deep reflection on yourself, you can no longer be the same person that you currently are. You can no longer play this game through your persona once you have exposed the previously concealed parts of you. And if so, this is actually something to welcome. This is something to celebrate as a true moment of you culminating the aspect of your life which was lived mostly unconsciously and moving into the part of your life where you can now make more conscious decisions that take into account all parts of you and the truth of what you're experiencing. But I want to make a very important note here, because a lot of people get hung up in shadow work and do it from a kind of judgmental angle on themselves. Some people go into shadow work immediately assuming that they're full of darkness, have a lot of issues to accept, need to be constantly doing this shadow work to scrutinize themselves and their past and look for more reasons to heal or to seek some kind of solace in themselves, without actually seeing that shadow work is not something that needs to be a perpetual process. Shadow work is not something that has to happen all the time, every single day, to keep you in a constant loop of healing. Shadow work is but the first stage of the consciousness expansion journey. It's the stage that begins when you decide to peer into the most difficult aspects of you to find the way back to the light. It's like choosing to go into the tunnel, seeing that there's light at the end of that tunnel, but still having to walk through these shadows of your consciousness before you can get to the place of truly illuminating your true essence. Shadow work is not meant to make you a hostage to your past. Not meant to make you feel like you are constantly needing to do this kind of work on yourself to find more reasons to heal and to stay stuck in the loop of dealing with your trauma. Trauma can be integrated also by seeing that the ultimate goal of your subconscious mind is to bring you into a state of acceptance. The reason why you have been experiencing this deeply repressed part of you is because it was ultimately meant to teach you the lesson of integration. It is ultimately meant to help you get to a point in your awareness journey where you can now see that the totality of you includes even these complex parts of you that don't want to be seen. It's like a scared aspect of you that wants to be loved but doesn't know how to present itself because you already have repressed it in the past. The great work of consciousness expansion and personal development leads you to the eventual realization that your shadow self is also you. It can't be disowned by you. It's an expression of you, which means it is a creation of yours. It was programmed by you and by your experiences, which even though you may believe you didn't choose, on some higher level, perhaps you did. Which means that even the deepest, darkest parts of you are also part of your programming, which means they deserve love. They deserve tolerance and acceptance, which also means that when you come into the state of acceptance, which is ultimately the lesson presented by the shadow, you no longer have to resist the resistance, which automatically dispels it. And so as soon as you learn to peer into the darkness rather than fearing it, you start to light up what hasn't been lit before. You start to see the truth in what has always been present, but that didn't receive your attention. And that automatically shifts the balance towards more consciousness, more awareness, and more love in your reality. As you learn to see the shadow, you also can't unsee what it's telling you about who you are, which helps you find a more balanced acceptance within yourself of your purpose, of your true personality, and of the traits that deserve to be expressed by you in the world. Now, on a larger level, the collective unconscious is also what produces the shadow that we experience on planet Earth. All of the difficult emotions, the suffering, pain, greed, different low-frequency emotions, and all of the negative experiences that still perpetuate across the planet are an expression of the collective shadow. And so as an individual, you have the power to help dispel the collective shadow by choosing to no longer resist your own, by choosing to dispel this darkness that exists within you just by choosing to honor it and to see the sacredness in your full experience. You can choose to light up your individual fractal within the collective. By seeing your shadow, you're becoming a more fully embodied human being, which can help to illuminate other people's shadows through your very presence. By choosing to be authentic, truthful, and to stand in integrity with your own soul, you're choosing to do the shadow work, which is truly illuminating of an expansion of your individual consciousness, which is the most valuable contribution that you can make as a soul experiencing this journey with the rest of us in the collective. So do this work not only for yourself, but for your loved ones, for your friends, for your family, for the future generations, for the entire collective, because truly the collective consciousness depends on each of us doing this kind of work to understand who we are, to be more truthful reflectors of our nature, so that we no longer have to create this polarity war on the planet by ending it within ourselves.